Good evening.
Thank you for having me.
So, Mr. Schweitzer, Europe is overwhelmed. You also serve as a consultant for government ministries on a private basis. What would you advise the Belgian government right now?
I think to eternalize the fact that Belgium, as well as other states in Europe, are under attack. That must be eternalized and acted upon. There must be allocation of more resources, more manpower, more means of defense in Europe, strengthening the connection with other agencies, and be prepared for this kind of a war, because if anybody has any other thoughts, he is proven wrong by the attacks in France, the attack in Belgium, and possible other attacks. We found out that the Islamic State has an international apparatus for international terrorism, and they intend to activate it.
And so when you mention more resources and manpower in Europe, what does that mean for you exactly?
No, I think look, the fight against IS as well as against Al-Qaeda and its partners is intelligence-based war. Not only on the offensive, which is true too, but also on the defensive. You have to have good intelligence, good personnel who are qualified to deal with this kind of challenge. You have to have the assistance of the local Muslim community. So it requires a lot of work, day-to-day work, in order to be ready for this kind of operations ahead of time. And if it failed, you have to have rapid response forces to minimize the effects of these attacks.
So let's look at the big picture for a moment. U.S. forces have pushed back IS in Iraq and Syria, and then we see this sort of resurgence in Europe. Is IS struggling and then trying to launch large-scale attention-getting attacks to get more recruits?
I think it's a misconception of what is IS and what it's about and what is its strategy. I think that this assumption that IS is operating in the West now, specifically in Europe, in recent months, is a result of its setbacks in Syria and Iraq is wrong. I think that they have planned an international terror strategy way before they suffered these setbacks. They didn't qualify these thousands of Westerners in operations just for using them as a cannon fodder in suicide attacks in Iraq and Syria. They didn't just qualify them in order to use them as a propaganda and recruiting tool, but as part of their strategy to attack Europe eventually. And what we have seen in the last year is the result of this pre-planned strategy.
So I want to ask you, before we let you go, you're also an expert on Al-Qaeda. Also happening in the background is this competition between IS and Al-Qaeda. In the bigger picture, how is that changing terror?
In a sense, it's a fertile ground for counter-propaganda, counter-terror espionage, trying to push both of them against each other. This is on the short term, which is a good thing. On the larger term, on the longer term, I think that eventually we will see probably a collaboration between those current enemies, because they share the same vision, the same philosophy, the same intention, and they just have personal power struggle between the leaders and competition on targeted audiences. But eventually, unfortunately, I suppose that we'll see collaboration between these two allegedly rivalries, and therefore we have to fight both of them and not to neglect the fight against Al-Qaeda, who is concealing itself and its operations behind the smokescreen that IS is spreading.
Yoram Schweitzer, thanks very much for this.
You're welcome.